He had already got to the point where, with a stronger rocking, he maintained his equilibrium with difficulty, and very soon he would finally have to decide, for in 5 minutes it would be 7:15. Then there was a ring at the door of the apartment. "That's someone from the office," he told himself, and he almost froze while his small limbs only danced around all the faster. For one moment everything remained still. "They aren't opening," Gregor said to himself, caught up in some absurd hope. But, of course then, as usual, the servant girl, with her firm tread, went to the door and opened it. Gregor needed to hear only the visitor's first word of greeting to recognize immediately who it was. The manager himself. Why was Gregor the only one condemned to work in a firm where, at the slightest lapse, someone immediately attracted the greatest suspicion? Were all the employees then, collectively, one and all, scoundrels? Was there then among them no truly devoted person who, if he failed to use just a couple hours in the morning for office work, would become abnormal from pangs of conscience, and really be in no state to get out of bed? Was it really not enough to let an apprentice make inquiries, if such questioning was even necessary? Must the manager himself come, and in the process must it be demonstrated to the entire innocent family that the investigation of this suspicious circumstance could only be entrusted to the intelligence of the manager? And, more as a consequence of the excited state in which this idea put Gregor than as a result of an actual decision, he swung himself with all his might out of the bed. There was a loud thud, but not a real crash. The fall was absorbed somewhat by the carpet, and, in addition, his back was more elastic than Gregor had thought. For that reason, the dull noise was not quite so conspicuous, but he had not held his head up with sufficient care, and he had hit it. He turned his head, irritated and in pain, and rubbed it on the carpet. "Something has fallen in there," said the manager in the next room on the left. Gregor tried to imagine himself whether anything similar to what was happening to him today could have also happened at some point to the manager. At least one had to concede the possibility of such a thing. However, as if to give a rough answer to this question, the manager now took a few determined steps in the next room with a squeak of his polished boots. From the neighboring room on the right, the sister was whispering to inform Gregor. "Gregor, the manager's here." "I know," said Gregor to himself, but he did not dare make his voice loud enough so that his sister could hear. "Gregor," his father now said from the neighboring room on the left, "Mr. Manager has come, and is asking why you have not left on the early train. We do not know what we should tell him. Besides, he also wants to speak to you personally, so please, open the door. He will be good enough to forgive the mess in your room." In the middle of all of this, the manager called out in a friendly way, "Good morning, Mr. Samsa." "He is not well," said his mother to the manager, while his father was still talking at the door. "He is not well, believe me, Mr. Manager. Otherwise how would Gregor miss a train? The young man has nothing in his head except business. I'm almost angry that he never goes out at night. Right now he's been in the city 8 days, but he's been at home every evening. He sits there with us at the table and reads the newspaper quietly or studies his travel schedules. It's quite a diversion for him if he busies himself with fretwork. For instance, he cut out a small frame over the course of 2 or 3 evenings. You'd be amazed how pretty it is. It's hanging right inside the room. You'll see it immediately as soon as Gregor opens the door. Anyway, I'm happy that you are here, Mr. Manager. By ourselves, we would have never made Gregor open the door. He's so stubborn. He's certainly not well, although he denied that this morning." "I'm coming right away," said Gregor slowly and deliberately, and didn't move so as not to lose one word of the conversation. "My dear lady, I cannot explain it to myself in any other way," said the manager. "I hope it is nothing serious. On the other hand, I must also say that we business people, luckily or unluckily, however one looks at it, very often simply have to overcome a slight indisposition for business reasons." "So, can Mr. Manager come in and see you now?" asked his father impatiently, and knocked once again on the door. "No," said Gregor. In the neighboring room on the left, a painful stillness descended. In the neighboring room on the right, the sister began to sob. Why didn't his sister go to the others? She'd probably just gotten up out of bed now and hadn't even started to get dressed yet. Then why was she crying? Because he wasn't getting up and wasn't letting the manager in? Because he was in danger of losing his position? And because then his boss would badger his parents once again with the old demands? Those were probably unnecessary worries right now. Gregor was still here and wasn't thinking at all about abandoning his family. At the moment, he was lying right there on the carpet, and no one who knew about his condition would have seriously demanded that he let the manager in. But Gregor wouldn't be casually dismissed right away because of this small discourtesy, for which he would find an easy and suitable excuse later on. It seemed to Gregor that it might be far more reasonable to leave him in peace at the moment instead of disturbing him with crying and conversation. But it was the very uncertainty which distressed the others and excused their behavior. "Mr. Samsa," the manager was now shouting, his voice raised. "What's the matter? You're barricading yourself in your room, answer with only a yes and a no, and are making serious and unnecessary troubles for your parents, and neglecting, I mention this only incidentally, your commercial duties in a truly unheard-of manner. I'm speaking here in the name of your parents and your employer, and I am requesting you, in all seriousness, for an immediate and clear explanation. I am amazed. I thought I knew you as a calm, reasonable person, and now you appear suddenly to want to start parading around in weird moods. The chief indicated to me earlier this very day a possible explanation for your neglect. It concerned the collection of cash entrusted to you a short while ago. But in truth I almost gave him my word of honor that this explanation could not be correct. However, now I see here your unimaginable pig-headedness, and I'm totally losing any desire to speak up for you in the slightest. And your position is not at all the most secure. Originally I intended to mention all this to you privately, but since you're letting me waste my time here uselessly, I don't know why the matter shouldn't come to the attention of your parents. Your productivity has also been very unsatisfactory recently. Of course, it's not the time of year to conduct exceptional business. We recognize that. But a time of year for conducting no business? There's no such thing at all, Mr. Samsa, and such a thing must never be. But, Mr. Manager, called Gregor, beside himself in his agitation, forgetting everything else. I'm opening the door immediately, this very moment. A slight indisposition, a dizzy spell has prevented me from getting up. I'm still lying in bed right now, but now I'm quite refreshed once again. I'm in the midst of getting out of the bed. Just have patience for a short moment. Things are not going so well as I thought, but things are all right. How suddenly this can overcome someone. Just yesterday everything was fine with me. My parents certainly know that. Actually, just yesterday evening I had a small premonition. People must have seen that in me. Why have I not reported that to the office? But people always think that they'll get over the sickness without having to stay at home. Mr. Manager, take it easy on my parents. There was really no basis for the criticism which you are now making against me, and really, nobody has said a word to me about that. Perhaps you have not read the latest orders which I have shipped. Besides, now I'm setting out on my trip on the 8 o'clock train. A few hours' rest have made me stronger. Mr. Manager, do not stay. I will be at the office in person right away. Please have the goodness to say that and to convey my respects to the chief. While Gregor was quickly blurting all this out, hardly aware of what he was saying, he had moved close to the chest of drawers without effort, probably as a result of practice he had already had in bed, and now he was trying to raise himself up on it. Actually, he wanted to open the door. He really wanted to let himself be seen by and to speak with the manager. He was keen to witness what the others now asking after him would say at the sight of him. If they were startled, then Gregor had no more responsibility and could be calm. But if they accepted everything quietly, then he would have no reason to get excited and, if he got a move on, could really be at the station around 8 o'clock. At first he slid down a few times from the smooth chest of drawers. But at last he gave himself a final swing and stood upright there. He was no longer at all aware of the pains in his lower body, no matter how they might still sting. Now he let himself fall against the back of a nearby chair, on the edge of which he braced himself with his thin limbs. By doing this, he gained control over himself and kept quiet, for he could now hear the manager. "Did you understand a single word?" the manager asked the parents. "Is he playing the fool with us?" "For God's sake," cried the mother, already in tears. "Perhaps he's very ill and we're upsetting him. Greet! Greet!" she yelled at that point. "Mother!" called the sister from the other side. They were making themselves understood through Gregor's room. "You must go to the doctor right away. Gregor is sick. Hurry to the doctor. Have you heard Gregor speak yet?" "That was an animal's voice," said the manager, remarkably quiet in comparison to the mother's cries. "Anna! Anna!" yelled the father through the hall into the kitchen, clapping his hands. "Fetch a locksmith right away!" The two young women were already running through the hall with swishing skirts. How had his sister dressed herself so quickly? And yanked open the doors of the apartment. One couldn't hear the doors closing at all. They probably had left them open, as is customary in an apartment in which a huge misfortune has taken place. However, Gregor had become much calmer. All right. People did not understand his words anymore, although they seemed clear enough to him, clearer than previously, perhaps because his ears had gotten used to them. But at least people now thought that things were not all right with him, and were prepared to help him. The confidence and assurance with which the first arrangements had been carried out made him feel good. He felt himself included once again in the circle of humanity, and was expecting, from both the doctor and the locksmith, without differentiating between them with any real precision, splendid and surprising results. In order to get as clear a voice as possible for the critical conversation which was imminent, he coughed a little, and certainly took the trouble to do this in a really subdued way, since it was possible that even this noise sounded like something different from a human cough. He no longer trusted himself to decide any more. Meanwhile, in the next room it had become really quiet. Perhaps his parents were sitting with the manager at the table and were whispering. Perhaps they were all leaning against the door and listening. Gregor pushed himself slowly towards the door, with the help of the easy chair, let go of it there, threw himself against the door, held himself upright against it. The balls of his tiny limbs had a little sticky stuff on them, and rested there momentarily from his exertion. Then he made an effort to turn the key in the lock with his mouth. Unfortunately, it seemed that he had no real teeth. How then was he to grab hold of the key? But to make up for that, his jaws were naturally very strong. With their help, he managed to get the key really moving, and he did not notice that he was obviously inflicting some damage on himself, for brown fluid came out of his mouth, flowed over the key, and dripped onto the floor. "Just listen for a moment," said the manager in the next room. "He's turning the key." For Gregor, that was a great encouragement. But they all should have called out to him, including his father and mother. "Come on, Gregor," they should have shouted. "Keep going. Keep working on the lock." Imagining that all his efforts were being followed with suspense, he bit down frantically on the key with all the force he could muster. As the key turned more, he danced around the lock. Now he was holding himself upright only with his mouth, and he had to hang on to the key or then press it down again with the whole weight of his body as necessary. The quite distinct click of the lock as it finally snapped really woke Gregor up. Breathing heavily, he said to himself, "So I didn't need the locksmith," and he set his head against the door handle to open the door completely.